Hey, what's going on, guys? David Robio here out of eXp Realty, and I'm going to let you know exactly what to expect going into 2024 if you're a buyer, seller, or investor. So listen up, let's go. So to see where we're going to be heading, the first thing we need to do is quickly recap where we were in 2023. The first thing we're going to look at is how much did home values go up. Through the entire year, home values only went up 4.5%, which is below a regular average between 8 and 12%. Now, why was that the case? Well, that was because of one thing, interest rates. Interest rates went up 3 times in 2023 for a total of 0.75% increase to bring the overnight rate to 5%, which means it's expensive to borrow money, which is taking money out of buyers' pockets that they can put into sellers' pockets. All right, I get it. What is the overnight rate? So for those of you who don't know what the overnight rate is, that is essentially where the Bank of Canada sets the borrowing costs that any bank, CIBC, RBC, Scotia, any bank you could think of, has to borrow fund to give to a potential purchaser. And the higher that rate is, the higher they have to put their rate, which means you as the buyer have a higher carrying cost, which means you can't afford things as much. So what we want to see is that overnight rate go down, which means the banks can give you money cheaper, which means you can spend more money on things and the value of things can increase. Got it? Good. Let's keep going. So to see where we're going to be at in 2024, there's a few things we need to track. Number one is supply. Number two is demand. Number three is what the government's going to be doing. And number four is where our interest rate's going to be at. So with that in mind, let's jump into the first thing, which is supply. Jumping in with supply, quite simply, we're not going to have enough of it. And that's from two perspectives. Number one, builders are not going to be able to build homes fast enough based on the amount of demand that we currently have, let alone the demand that we're going to be seeing coming on an annual basis. Second, the only other supply we have is resale homes, meaning people voluntarily putting their home for sale on the market. And even at their current rate, we still don't even meet our demand. And simply put, we still don't have enough supply. Now we get into demand. We essentially have two types of demand. Number one is how many people can actually afford to purchase and be a buyer. And number two is how many people can't afford to purchase just yet, but need a home and are going to be renting. Either which way, we do not have enough homes to meet our current demand. And the other thing is, we're expected to have about 500,000 newcomers to Canada every single year for the next 3 years, which means 1.5 million new people, and we can't even house the people we have right now. Therefore, just off basic numbers, we have far too much demand. Next, we get into government influence. Government influences our market by two primary ways. Number one is new policy change. This not only impacts the real estate market, but also any other ancillary markets. And next, what we see all the time happen with government influence is elections. And we have two elections coming up. We have the US election coming up in 2024, and we have the Canadian election coming up in 2025. And typically, who's ever in office is trying to do something to win better favor with the general public, to get more votes, and this positively impacts the market. So the last biggest influence on the market is interest rates. It's probably been the biggest conversation over the past couple of years given our market. And really simply put, as interest rates are high, property valuations have to be low. But as interest rates starts to go lower, property valuations start to increase based off supply and demand, very basic economics. However, it is projected that this coming April, interest rates will start to decrease. And as they start to decrease, we can see property valuations going up all the way through the rest of the year. Therefore, being a very positive outlook for valuations on property. So there's really only three types of buyers. And the first thing you need to do is identify what buyer you are. Are you a first-time home buyer? Are you a buyer looking to move up into the market? Or are you a buyer that's looking to downsize and move down into the market? So if you're a first-time home buyer, just get into the freaking market, okay? Get in right now if you can afford to do so. Because even though rates are high, valuations are low, and over the years, as rates start to come down, your property valuation will be up, and 5 years from now, you'll be very happy you listened to this guy. So our second buyer is anyone who's looking to move up into the market. Very simply put, right now is a very optimal time to do so. Since you're moving up in the market and interest rates are high, that home is actually at a discounted price, but so is your home, but the discount on this home is actually greater than the amount that you would be losing on your home, therefore making it a very optimal time to be doing that upsize right now. Now, the last type of buyer we have is someone who's looking to downsize in the market. And this is actually a pretty complex transaction in any market, especially the one that we're in right now. And I'll explain to you why. Let's say you're selling a home, and obviously it's a more expensive home. Given where interest rates are, that more expensive home, there's actually less people that can afford it, therefore less buyers who are willing to buy it. And now you're trying to buy a less expensive home, and again, given where interest rates are, more people can afford that, therefore there's more buyers. So you're selling a home where you have less buyers and you're trying to buy a home where you have more buyers. You can see how that's quite complex and a little bit hard to time. And that's why more than ever, you need a realtor that can actually execute this. And if you're working with someone who hasn't done this before, don't expect them to time it and get it right, especially in this market. You need to work with an experienced realtor. So now for all my sellers, there's really only 3 types of sellers. We have sellers who are looking to upsize the market, sell their home and get a bigger home. We have sellers who are looking to downsize, sell their home and get a smaller home. And then we have some sellers who are just looking to cash out of the market altogether. So very similarly to, like I said earlier, to our sellers who are looking to upsize, it's actually a great time to be optimizing on that because you're gonna have more buyers that can afford your home. And when you go to buy your new home, you're gonna have less people to compete with. And that's a really sensible transaction. Second, we have sellers who are looking to downsize. Like I said in my earlier explanation for those buyers, it's a very complex transaction to time. So it's very important that you're working with someone who can actually time the transaction. And then our last sellers, which are people who are just looking to cash out of the market, my number one question I ask those sellers is, when did you buy the home? If you've owned the home for 25 years, whether you sold last year, this year, or even next year, net, you should be doing pretty good. If I'm talking to someone who wants to cash out of the market and they've only owned the home for 5 years, well, that's a very different conversation because there might not be enough equity to A, make it make sense, or B, have enough of a gain. So it might make sense to hold that property a little bit longer, to wait till interest rates come down and the valuations of properties go up. So with this one, it really depends how long you've held the current property for. So now the last type of people we have in our marketplace are investors. Now, investing in real estate is actually pretty broad and there's a lot of different things you can do. So for all my buy and hold investors, this is actually still a good strategy. You just have to ensure that your expectations for buy and hold on the long-term horizon is set correctly. If you're telling me, David, I want to buy and hold for 5 years, not a long enough time horizon to allow for a little bit of fluctuation. I would say a buy and hold time horizon should be about 10 years. This gives enough time for a full market cycle to come through, enough equity to build up in the property, and it net makes sense at the end. So I would say if that's your expectation, right now is still a good time to do that. My next set of investors are people who are looking to flip homes. And very basically, someone who buys a home, does some work to it, and puts it back on the open market and sells it for a profit. I would not advise this strategy right now. It is very challenging. Labor costs have increased, supply material costs have increased. The cost of money is very expensive to even buy that property right now. And then you have all the expenses that come with then selling it on the open market. This was something that was a little bit more promising when the market was on a very high trajectory and money was very low. That is not this market right now, so I would not advise this as investors right now. So for my investors that are looking to do short-term rentals, such as Airbnb, I'm a little bit 50-50 on this one. My reason for that is if you have a property in a really high traffic and demand area, such as Collingwood or Wasaga, the bookings are still really high and it's actually still quite profitable. However, if you just have a regular home or like a regular condo, the bookings have dropped dramatically, therefore not making it as feasible. So with this, I would really consult a professional who has done this time and time again. However, if I could give you a little tip, I would get a property that is going to be in high demand, has a lot of things to do, and is going to be a really good tourist attraction. Now, to all my investors out there that want to invest in pre-construction, now is a really good time to do so. Now, when you're investing in pre-construction, the goal is to do long-term horizon. Typically, and like I said, for my very first point, buy and hold long-term is great. And now, given where interest rates are at, a lot of builders are giving great incentives, making it an even better time to buy pre-construction right now. Now, there's a second caveat to pre-construction real estate, and that is assignment sales. Right now, there are a ton of really great assignment opportunities on the market, and these are really good for anybody who either has cash on hand or has access to cash at a great price. Really great opportunity right now. Now, very quickly, if you don't know what an assignment sale is, I'm gonna do my best to explain it, not only quick, but really simple. Buyer A goes to a developer and says, I wanna buy a condo for $500,000 3 or 4 years ago. No problem, goes and buys that property. You don't need a mortgage at that time. However, now it's coming time to close on that property, and because interest rates are so high, even though you bought it for $500,000, you can't qualify to close on it, and it's actually not worth $500,000 anymore. It's actually worth $400,000. Therefore, you have an issue. You can't close on it, and it's not worth the price you paid for it. So buyer B comes in and says, hey, assign me the rights to your contract at $400,000. Therefore, buyer A loses that $100,000, but buyer B gets the opportunity to buy it for $400,000 and can confidently close on that property. Therefore, pretty much making 100 grand. That is an assignment sale as simply as I can give it to you. And it's a really great opportunity right now. All right, so to recap everything, 2024, I think interest rates are gonna come down about 0.75%. I also think that real estate prices are gonna increase. And I think if you're a buyer, seller, or investor, I outlined a ton of great things that you should be doing to win in 2024. With that, I lightly grazed on top of anything. So if you heard anything that you wanted more information on, all you gotta do is one thing. Reach out to me, happy to explain everything in detail, put together an awesome plan to make sure that you win for 2024. I appreciate you guys sticking around. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.